Hi, Claudia. Really glad to be speaking with you. Thanks for joining me. We'll dive right into it. We're going to be talking about data-driven product strategy. And one of your last jobs, you're now co-founder of a startup. We'll talk about that later, maybe. But one of your previous jobs was at HighSpot, which is a kind of sales enablement solution. And you were director of product insights. So maybe you could start by telling us what that meant and what your job was.
Of course. At HighSpot as Director of Product Insights, what I did was led all of the research, analytics, strategy for influencing product decisions. So every single product that we ship, that we conceptualize, that we came up with, were all driven by thoughtful exploration of data, thoughtful combination of all of the different inputs, customer feedback, sales feedback, pre-post sales, all of those wonderful things, product analytics, user research studies into one ultimate strategy to make sure that whatever we ship is successful.
Yeah, that sounds great. Is that a common role where like a PM owns all of the data and insights across larger companies? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Actually, there's a funny story to this. I started my career in banking, and then after banking, I shifted into data science for a little bit, and somehow fell into the role of PM. So it naturally happened where sometimes they needed the PM to also, like a few jobs ago, that company needed the PM to also manage a data science or user research org, and that transition just happened naturally, and it's been like that ever since.
Yeah, it sounds like a great fit. So you were instrumental in essentially crafting this data-driven strategy or approach to building products. So maybe you could describe like what is a great data-driven strategy? What does that include?
I've heard people describe data-driven strategies in multiple ways, and thinking about how I personally would describe it and how I've seen some of my colleagues that are really successful at building data-driven strategies and wonderful products, a data-driven strategy is one that takes into account every possible influential signal to influence a decision. And as I'm saying that, the one thing that I want to caution is every possible signal doesn't necessarily mean every single signal, because from a statistics model perspective, we know that if we incorporate every single signal, it's just noise, right? At that point, you're just incorporating things that might not necessarily drive what the metric that you want to drive. But being able to almost have a consistent process where you notice that this type of customer feedback is important. And therefore, for this product, I always want to make sure that I receive feedback from this particular persona. At the same time, for this particular product, monitoring LTV is most important. So making sure that I monitor all signals that have some sort of correlation with LTV is also important. The best data-driven strategies are the ones that actually know the types of signals that the PM or whoever the person involved in the project sees all of these signals and then combines it in a way that's meaningful for the strategy.
Great. Okay, so for the takeaway here is like you've got to be thinking about the wide variety of signals that you might be getting around a product. Let's assume you're looking at one product, like multi-product gets even more complex. But what does it look like in practice? So most companies will have product analytics, they'll have a warehouse, they'll have some user research function with interviews, they'll have also all the calls that their sales or customer facing teams are doing. So how do you combine those into a strategy?
Yeah, there's a few different ways, and one way, and I'll actually describe two people in my team who did this fantastically well, actually three of them. So one way to do this is through utilizing machine learning. And once you build a machine learning model that combines all of these different inputs, it'll basically be something that you can constantly do moving forward. So what we did at HighSpot was Kirsten Huang, Beck Millet, and Elise Ho were two researchers and data scientists in my team. And what they did was they built a sentiment analysis for every single customer feedback that we received that's valuable to a product. One of them from an NPS survey that we actually ran with Chameleon Toolkit, like I'm sure you remember that project that we did together. So we combined all of that into this topic model that constantly runs over time. And then we combined those insights as well with product analytics data that also has some correlation with the product that we were measuring at that time and shipping for, which was our meetings intelligence product. And so over time, this analytics engine just kept on producing and surfacing new insights. And that's essentially how you do it. It is a lot of upfront work, but it does pay so much dividends down the road.
So we've got like an ML model based around sentiment, which is all of the qualitative feedback or all of the things that people are saying in calls, maybe through transcripts, etc. And then you've got the quants from the event analytics or whatever else. And so are you then kind of going to these two things, and when you've got questions and asking like, hey, what's the sentiment for a feature to decide if we should work on it or not? Or are there kind of more proactive insights or continuous insights being generated? Can you tell me a bit more about how you use these like two data sets essentially?
Yeah, of course. So they were essentially, at the initial level, there were a couple of insights that were generated from the sentiment at that point in time that ultimately help us prioritize what to build for our product. Now, as we built the product and as we thought about iterating on it, usually what I've seen teams do in the past is they would completely start a new user research project, or they'd create a dashboard on Amplitude and try to dig deep into the metrics and do everything from scratch. Now, if you have an engine like this, it'll just surface you new insights as phone calls come in, as hopefully not customer complaints, but either positive or negative customer feedback comes in. It'll surface you all of these insights in the model that then you can use to make decisions to iterate on your product on, which is what happened eventually. We looked back at all of the feedback we received, we ran the model again, and we got new incremental feedback that also helped us improve the product, as opposed to having to do studies from scratch, creating dashboards from scratch, creating metrics from scratch, and redoing everything.
Yeah, amazing. And you were doing all of this like pre what I don't know is the new AI era where everything is a lot easier. So you had to invest in it a lot. I would presume for teams that are maybe less far along in their journey or have less access to resources to build their own models, are there go-to tools to help with this, or what's your advice to them to get being more kind of data-driven in their approach?
Yeah, it is hard, and it is a lot of investment that you have to make upfront. And honestly, that's why I'm building the company that I'm building right now, Riley AI, because Riley automates all of this for you. So within a click of a button, without having to code or prompt or do anything like that, you can connect Riley to your product analytics dashboard, upload all of your qualitative data, and then Riley will just generate the insights for you in this continuous model that learns and grows with you. Yeah, so I thought, as I reflect back on my career, and even the beginning of this conversation, when we were talking about like, is this product insights function, like it's very unique, is it common? Yes, it is. And to do it really well, you do have to invest in these types of more like combining disparate sources of data into a strategy. And I think any tool that can help make it easier for you will be extremely helpful in the long run.
And I guess the difference in maybe what you're building with versus what's out there today, I could maybe go to Gong and ask a question of like, hey, what's of all the calls that we have, my team has had, what's happening? Or maybe there's other ways, there's all of the places where conversations are uploaded today, whether it's Dovetail or something else, there's like AI analysis available. That's relatively straightforward, but it's another step to use that proactively in an ongoing way versus just going to that as a source of
exactly
data.
Yeah. And combining all of the different insights, because Gong might say one thing, but then your Amplitude dashboard says something else, and then a user researcher in your team also says, hey, we ran this concept testing and there's these other insights. So which one's important? As PMs, we like end up with a laundry list of feature requests. I've seen the scariest one I've seen was 400, none of them addressed. At the point, how do you prioritize in a way that's meaningful?
Yeah, exactly.
That's the hard part.
Yeah, that's definitely the hard part. Well, you're building software to make product PM's life easier, which is awesome. Okay, as we wrap up, I have a couple quicker questions. What are your go-to resources for learning new things in the world of product?
One thing that I absolutely love to do lately is actually reading a lot of papers that venture capital recently release, especially because it's a new fiscal year. And so I was reading a paper recently from Battery Ventures about the state of SaaS. And the other day I was reading a couple of papers on retrieval augmented generation. And so a lot of these venture capitals, by the way, venture capital funding is going to be increasing this year, which is really exciting. All of the stats say that. And therefore they're kind of like launching all of these papers that shows where their head is at, where the investment thesis is for the upcoming year. And a lot of them are well researched. And even if you're not a founder or a investor, being a PM and knowing where your investors are thinking this year can help you determine also where to put your strategies, right? Like if you're thinking about how to evolve this product, how to incorporate AI into what you do in a meaningful way, then reading all of these resources will help you think in a more broader fashion. So that's how I learn.
Yeah, that's awesome. Maybe to incorporate that into your model.
Yeah.
And then lastly, what's a product that you use regularly and love, and why?
I use WhatsApp regularly. And the reason why I use WhatsApp regularly is the most basic reason is because my family is in Indonesia, so it's extremely easy to contact them and connect with them. But one thing that's really interesting about WhatsApp, especially in Indonesia, is people actually buy and sell products through there. So the other day I was purchasing a flower for my best friend who just recently gave birth. I think what's exciting about that is, as a product manager, being able to see how your product evolves. I'm sure when WhatsApp was created, they had no idea that someone, or maybe they did, but it wasn't with the intention of that in Indonesia, people would be buying and selling goods and services on the platform. So seeing it evolve is really fascinating, and seeing myself partake in that thousands of miles away is like, I had a reflective moment when that happened.
It's always really fun when your product is being used in ways that you don't expect because of people's creativity and how they managed to use it to solve a problem that they have. So that's definitely really fun. It's I can understand why you like that as a product. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for joining me. Really interesting insights on creating data-driven strategies. And so thanks for sharing, and hope to speak to you soon.
Of course. Thank you, Pulkit. Thanks for having me.